Hi, everyone. Welcome to your Global Check-in series, episode number 1. And today, Csenge and I are going to talk about
immigration and expatriation and things to prepare for when you're moving.
Exactly. So maybe we'll introduce ourselves quickly. So Csenge, would you like to start introducing yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Csenge. I'm originally from Hungary, but I've been living in Spain for almost 9 years now. I also moved countries twice in my adult life and been working internationally for a very long time. So I have quite a lot of experience in the area. And I've been working as an intercultural trainer for over 6 years. So yeah, this is quite a present topic in my life.
Exactly.
Nadege, your turn.
My turn. So my name is Nadege. I'm half French, half German. And like Csenge, I've worked internationally in the past. I grew up in France and in Germany. I studied in Spain, so I know Madrid, where Csenge is. I worked out of Germany with a lot of different countries, and then I moved to Singapore, where I discovered my passion for culture, which led me then to the UK, where I wanted to learn a bit more. So I did a master's in business psychology. And I'm actually an intercultural trainer, just like Csenge, and I've been doing this for the past 12 years now. And the topic of expatriation and immigration is really interesting because we all consider ourselves one or the other, right? So, for example, I consider myself an immigrant, and I will explain why. Csenge, what do you consider yourself?
I actually was reflecting on this yesterday. I do consider myself an immigrant too. But technically, like when I moved here at first, I think my situation was more similar to an expat. So yeah, when we get into the topic, I'll also tell more about
And I would like, maybe we can ask the audience, right, how they feel, if they feel more like an expat or more like an immigrant, if you are not a native of the country. So Andrea, would you like to start?
Sure, yeah. To be honest, I don't really know the difference.
Okay.
So I don't really, I think I'm part of a lot of expats groups. So I guess I consider myself an expat. I'm German originally, but I haven't actually lived in Germany my entire adult life. So it's also a little bit of an identity crisis issue. And people always, oh yeah, of course you're German. I'm like, yeah, but I lived 5 years in the Netherlands. I lived a year in the States. I lived sometimes in Chile. And then I spent 7 years in London, and now I live in Madrid for 5 years. So
Wow.
I've never paid taxes in Germany. I didn't study there. I don't really know things that I'm supposed to know apparently as a German. So yeah, I don't know, expat, I guess, but yeah, both.
Maybe once we define it, you may, confirm or say, actually, I'm not, I'm more an immigrant.
Okay.
Manoj, how about you?
It's like sort of between both, but an immigrant. I originally come from India, been in India for 30 plus years in my career, and then for the last 21 plus year, based in UK and a British citizen now. But then origin is South India and currently living and working in UK.
So you would say immigrant,
Yeah.
bit like, immigrant / expat. Okay.
More an immigrant,
More
and
of
it
an
depends on where you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Chaba, you're the next one on my video feed.
I think if you have to slap a label on it, then probably immigrant, ex-commie in the UK. So, that would be the short version. But to be honest, I don't know, because I'm not local, definitely, but I'm not local in Hungary either anymore. So that makes it a bit more difficult than just being an immigrant or expat.
True. Very true. How about Kasha?
So I consider myself as an immigrant.
Okay.
I moved myself to a different country.
And you're not looking to go back to Poland, are you?
I go occasionally. So I'm Polish, living in the UK. Right now I'm in Hungary. So I'm all over the place. So at the moment I feel the Brighton, it's my home. And any other place I feel comfortable, it's good. but I don't consider Poland as a home. I never like the same like Andrea. I never pay taxes in Poland. I studied there, and I spent half of my life now abroad. So
nice. So more of an immigrant, then that's good. Iliana is probably drinking her water. Iliana, we'll come to you last, so prepare yourself. But we're gonna ask Vicky. Oh, are you ready?
I don't know. That's never sure. For now, it's quiet. So, yeah, I don't know. Expats kind of have more positive note. At least, like it's like accepted more positively. Migrant, I don't know. I use the word migrant because immigrant and immigrant are different notions. You know that for sure, right? So yeah, I mean, immigrant is from the side of the country. Like I'm an immigrant for the Bulgarian authorities and immigrant for the Dutch. So that's why I use migrant usually, because people, they don't make, most people doesn't know immigrant and immigrant the difference. So yeah, but I don't know. I don't feel in Bulgaria, I feel different. I'm not like, I don't feel like I completely belong here, but yeah, also in the Netherlands, I also do not feel like in my own water. So yeah, I don't know. It's not easy, I mean, but I embrace this experience because it's widens my perspective, and at least, yeah.
Thank you,
That's it.
Iliana. Vicky, how about you? What would you consider yourself?
Hello, everyone. So I'm definitely now a native of Hungary since I live in Hungary, but we used to live in the US, in New York City for 5 years, and there we were not on an expat contract. So it was an interesting situation because on purpose we did not want to be on an expat contract. We have not become locals, but it's not something that I've ever heard in New York saying like I'm a local, or rarely I heard maybe just a few people saying that, yes, I was born and raised in New York. So that was very rare, and I would say I'm rather an explorer, if I can introduce a new category or something like that. And since we are now thinking again about moving abroad, this time either to Austria or Germany, it's going to be an interesting question, like how we are going to consider ourselves there, staying within Europe but in a different country. So I don't know. I'm here to listen to others' perspectives and learn, and at the same time observe myself, and bring some learnings from these past abroad experiences. So we'll see.
Amazing. Thank you, Vicky. So hopefully, yes, in the chat, you will get a better idea of how you want to consider yourself. Sandra, welcome. We were just asking every single person how they considered themselves, if they considered themselves more of an expat or an immigrant. So what would you consider yourself back in Saudi?
Unfortunately, I would say that I would have to consider myself still an expat. Just because I haven't learned the language, and not because I don't want to. There's a couple of challenges here to get over, just because they don't like foreigners to learn Arabic. And so, yeah, I'm having a little bit of difficulties. Otherwise, I would say I would consider myself a local. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. So, Csenge, what are the differences between immigrant and expatriate?
So I would say that it's more like the timeliness of it. So expats tend to be like a temporary thing, or at least like when you move with your company or you move with a program, or to even like the Erasmus study. I think that's also an example that could fit here. It's usually a temporary closed amount of time. And whereas as an immigrant, like you choose to move on your own, so it can be for a certain amount of time, but usually it's not. And also the level of support is very different. So when you move as an expat with your company, then of course, like the whole infrastructure, so to say, the paperwork and like most of the things, you get help with it directly, so you don't really need to put that much effort. Whereas if you're moving on your own, then you pretty much have to think of everything, which can get quite challenging.
Exactly. So I went to check the definition of what an expatriate is in the Oxford Dictionary, and an expat is considered to be someone that is leaving their native country to live a few years in one or different other countries, and then will repatriate at some point, right? So why did I choose to consider myself an immigrant is because I don't see myself going back even for retirement to Germany or France. So one reason we chose this topic as well is because I'm going to move to Portugal. So Csenge and I are going to share some insights as to, you know, what you need to prepare and things that you need to think about and research and all of that. So you understand now why I'm considering myself an immigrant is because I don't really foresee going back to either of the countries. How about you, Csenge? Has that changed your vision?
So in my case, when I moved to Spain, I came with an EU-funded volunteering project. So it was a little bit more of an expat arrangement because I had kind of the structure to it, like my hosting organization arranged a flat for me. Even the paperwork was not too complicated because it was kind of like an EU program. So of course, like the stipend I got was exempt from all the taxes. So I didn't need to set up any papers for that. I had private insurance through the program. So like I was kind of out of the system for the first year because it was a closed program and it was supposed to be temporary, although I already knew when I moved that I kind of want to stay and give this some more time. And then when the program was up and I actually moved into Madrid because I was living in a small town next to it, then that's when I kind of considered I really immigrated into Spain, because then I really had to start taking a look at things and papers and jobs and everything else that comes with immigration. And it was like quite a shift from, you know, having things arranged for me, whereas me having to look into things and just figure things out on my own. And I have to say it's still an ongoing process though, because I mean, of course, the longer you live in a country, you still keep on discovering new things.
Especially when it's a very bureaucratic country, isn't it?
Yep.
But I remember when I was expatriated from Germany to Singapore, I had this whole accompaniment. So all I had to do was to deliver the documents that my HR people needed for the visas and everything. But as you said, besides that, everything was organized. When you arrived in the country, you just went to the ministry, you got your visa, and then they found a place to live, so you were taken around. So health insurance and all of that. So everything is taken care of. The only thing that I didn't benefit from at the time, and that was about 15 years ago or so, is I didn't have any training to understand Singaporean culture. So obviously this, in the first 2 weeks, I had a few not culture shocks, but cultural faux pas towards my manager and some colleagues, but I quickly learned, you know, asking for feedback and checking in with Singaporean friends, what was the right way to do things and what was the wrong way. So that was helpful for the expatriation. And as you said, Csenge, to immigrate was the same when I had to come to the UK. At the time, it was still in the EU, so it's not as complicated as now. But you need to do all this research, right? Look at healthcare, how to set up your company, and all of these things, right?
Yeah. I mean, in my case, like interestingly enough, the volunteering program I came with actually had like a little bit of cultural preparation. So we had like an on-arrival training, because there are also all kinds of volunteers all over the country. So the national agency who centralizes the thing organized us a program. I think I was already here for a month when that happened. And it was not very deep, but it kind of gave us just some idea of like, you know, like there are, you know, more official languages in Spain and like kind of some obvious things. But then obviously, since we were kind of there for close amount of time and we were volunteers. Like, of course, they never told us about like health centers or, you know, taxes or any of these things, but it was kind of helpful to like at least get like a little bit of glimpse of, you know, like how the country is, like what can we expect. I mean, also the language itself was, I mean, I spoke some Spanish at that time, but I knew people who didn't. So it was helpful, but then even so, when I kind of finished the project and then just went on with my own, like, yeah, there were a lot of things to think about that I really wasn't quite prepared for.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And I like how, Sandra, you were saying you feel like a local, but you don't think you could really say you're a local because of the lack of language. Do you think this plays a major role in defining oneself in a country?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think for me, it's, you know, if I could express myself better, if I could communicate better, or at least make myself be understood, the doors would be open completely, because that's part of being able to find a job. A lot of jobs here. Sorry, they're cleaning the house, so you can hear the vacuum. Yeah, so that's one of the challenges that you have for not being able to find a good job, that you can see that it says bilingual and it says English and Arabic. So it's no longer English being the dominant language everywhere you go now. Now it's the English and the and the local language. So that's why I find it to be like, you know, challenging. I really want to do more, but I'm kind of tied, you know, not being able to do much more than that. Yep.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. How does everyone else feel? I mean, Andrea, Manoj, obviously, you know, for you is the also the native language English, I suppose. So how do you feel, or even Vicky or Lina? Welcome, Lina. We saw you come in. So how do you feel in the countries you're in right now? Do you feel like a local? So do you know the language really well? I'm not gonna ask Kasha and Chaba because I know it's perfect English. I'm fully immersed in the UK. Iliana, I could ask actually with the Dutch, yes, if she feels comfortable. And Vicky, you said you're still in Hungary, so obviously in native land for sure is okay. But how do the others feel? Not everyone at the same time. Too much response.
I'm happy to share. So when we moved to New York, I thought I would already speaking English very well, but then I have found myself in a very interesting situation, having a British manager. His manager was an Irish woman, and then within our team there were many Americans, and there was just one funny discussion happening over lunch when the English people were discussing whether you call it goosebumps or chill bumps, and then the Americans joined that conversation, and I found myself sitting there looking at both of them and saying, I don't mind how you call it. Please just stick to one word so that I can learn, I can use it, and I don't need to switch every time depending on who am I talking to. But obviously I ended up speaking different English because with my manager, I use the word flat instead of an apartment and things like that. So obviously some kind of adjustment was always needed, but that was a good reminder, and it actually helped me stay open. And now that I'm thinking about our next move, most probably to a German-speaking country, I don't speak German, so it's already a question mark, like how I'm going to get along there. Obviously, I think English would not be 100% sufficient there, so I need to pick up some German. And again, with German or with the Austrian language, the thing is that they are not using the same words. So
yes, it's a bit different. It's a different German. It's the same in Switzerland, actually. The Schweizerdeutsch is very different from the, and then where you choose to go in Germany, isn't it, Andrea? In the different regions, they have different dialects as well. So I grew up in Bavaria, for example, and I still don't understand Bavarian. I understand Hochdeutsch, but when they speak Bavarian, I'm like, okay, whatever you say, that's all right. And I think most Germans that are non-Bavarians, they might also have a bit of trouble understanding Bavarian German. And the Austrian is also has its own. So yeah. Lina, Andrea, would you like to share anything?
Yeah, for me, I lived in London for a while, and I really thought I spoke English very well when I moved there. I had lived in the States before and, you know, studied it forever. But yeah, it's just so different. It's kind of what you were saying, Vicky. At work, they were using so many words I had never heard before. And I lived with 3 English girls, actually, yeah, English girls in a flat. And I remember every single day there was another word I learned, like tummy, or, you know, they were just using random cutesy words. And I was like, I don't think, I actually came to this realization at some point where I'm just never going to get to a point where I'll know them all, or where I know all the sayings, or where I know all the, and I just sort of made my peace with it because I always had this ambition to speak like a native, you know. And in Spain, obviously, I started from scratch again. So kind of learning Spanish again and learning to speak and work in it. And then my partner's from Argentina, and a lot of my friends are from Latin, South, Central America. And so there's so many different words and so many different ways of speaking again. And I notice in myself it brings a lot of insecurity, because then I finally learned the grammar part, the way the Spaniards talk. But then I know in South America, it's really weird to use the vosotros form because it's kind of super formal. And so then you speak to someone in a very formal way. And so I tried to switch it, and then within one sentence, I'll use like both. And so that's just, yeah, it's a bit of a mind fuck.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, in Spain also the accents are quite challenging. Like, I mean, even within the country, like if you go down south, they have a super different accent, and like they pronounce just half of the words. Like, I mean, I remember when I first like paid a visit to Sevilla, I was already living in Spain for like a year. So I was like quite confident with my Spanish, like, okay, I can get by. And then like we got off the train, and then we had a super friendly taxi driver, and I didn't understand a single word what he was saying because I was just not used to the accent. And so it was just like, oh my God, like, okay, there's so much more still to this language. So yeah, that's definitely not an easy factor when you're moving countries.
But I like what you said, Andrea, with the Latin American Spanish. I had some friends here from Latin America after I moved from Spain. So I spoke Spanish from Spain, even though I studied with a lot of Americans. But one day I said, cogí el bus para ir a la uni. And they started laughing. I said, what are they laughing about? You know, I took the bus to go to the uni. And they told me, no, coger in Latin American Spanish has a sexual connotation, whereas in Spanish it means take the bus, right? So it was kind of funny to notice these little things.
Yeah, definitely. I also notice very often it's just a bit of a, I'm just not fully myself, right? So especially if we're in a big group of just Argentinians, I notice it with my partner very often afterwards that we have this conversation where I say, this was the most exhausting afternoon I've spent in months. And he's like, what? But you speak fluently. Like, it seems like you're totally integrated into the conversation. And it just doesn't feel that way at all for me. It's just exhausting. I think I missed probably about 30% or more of the conversation. And I just kind of fill in the gaps. And I think he doesn't see it. That's also frustrating for me when people don't see it. Like, yeah, you're in your native language, but I'm not. It's my 3rd, 4th, 5th language. It'd be really nice if you made an effort, just a little bit. That's my biggest frustration.
And that's an important point, you know, whether you're an expat or an immigrant in a country where the language is not your native language, but you speak it. Natives don't, and we see that a lot in the UK, isn't it? People, they work all the time in English, etc., but they have people coming from other countries that don't necessarily understand the nuances. And so natives don't realize how tiring it is for someone who is non-native. they just assume, as you said, Andrea, that you understand everything and that it doesn't cost you a lot of energy, but in fact it does because you're overstretching yourself, right? So Iliana said that she feels comfortable with Dutch, but it doesn't feel comfortable with her. So the Dutch is not comfortable with her. You're a global citizen, Manoj. I like that because I consider myself as well.
Yeah,
I don't
it's very
belong
nice.
anywhere. How about you, Csenge? The same?
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, it's like I was speaking to someone not so long ago, and then she asked me like, oh, okay, so like, what is the thing that you like and hate the most about like living elsewhere? And I actually said like, I kind of feel like a global citizen. Like, I feel like I don't belong anywhere, which is annoying on some level, but at the same time, it also means that I can pretty much fit everywhere. So it kind of has its pros and cons, and I think that's something that I like the most about it, and I hate the most about it, depending on the day.
Yeah. And if we come back to the expatriation and immigration, I think this is where also, we consider ourselves immigrant, but we prefer to use the word global citizen because it means that we can kind of adapt to different environment. We feel at home in multiple environments or wherever we are. But what do you think are the types of research that you need to do? So Vicky is gonna move probably to Germany or Austria, so I think that could come in handy, to look at what she would need to research in terms of preparing her immigration or expatriation, let's say that way. So Csenge, what would you recommend she start looking into?
Apartments, definitely, like the living situation, that's definitely something that I would say is quite key. Taxes, that's quite, yeah. It can also cause surprises, so I would say that's also something. In her case, I know she has a daughter, so I would also recommend taking a look at the school systems and whether you need some extra preparation or paperwork or any kind of thing for that. Since it's within the EU, I don't think any kind of visa or any like diploma, I don't know what's the official word, like when you kind of need to do some exams to get your diploma accredited in a different country, I don't think that is going to be an issue. What else?
Although it will depend, because Germany is very, I would say, a bit difficult on that front with diplomas. So if it's non-German diplomas, you may need to get the equivalent or get it translated. So that's something to keep in mind, for example, especially if you're going to look for a job over there, is making sure that you have the equivalent of your diploma to German terms, I would say. But also looking at how the resume should be done as well. And Csenge, maybe also cover letters, because it's a little bit different than in the UK or any other country. So it depends. What's the option, Vicky? Are you going to look for a job there, or are you going to be sent by? Yeah, you are. Okay.
Yes, I would, and most probably my husband would. And actually, one of our main motivations is exactly the school system, to make sure that our daughter can fit in there. So yes, we would look into that for sure.
And
also,
I think, yeah, go ahead, Csenge.
No, I just wanted to mention that Sandra had also a very good suggestion in the chat that like to reach out to locals via Facebook, or even joining some Facebook groups. There are quite a lot, so that could also be a helpful way to just really like get a glimpse of how people who are already there.
I'm also sharing the chat website, which is expat.com, which is really good if you want to have information on documentations and stuff like that, what you need, how the taxes work, because that's going to be an important point as well. Taxes, because let's say if you keep your home in Hungary, depending on whether you rent it or not, you'll need to see how that fits in with the tax regime. So all of these things are really, key to look into. Maybe get an advisor or an accountant or a lawyer to share all these things with you, isn't it, Csenge?
Yeah, and even depending on what time of the year you're moving, because like with the tax residency, like if you're spending more than a half year in one place, then that's the place where you need to file your taxes. So that could also, like if you're moving more towards the end of the year, then you might still just need to be aware that, okay, you probably need to do your taxes in Hungary still for the year before and so on.
Manoj, I think I cut you off, isn't it? I'm sorry.
It's again like there are a lot of meetup groups as well online, and communities where you can actually engage and understand a bit more about the culture, biases as well, and what you need to be aware of. And yeah, it's more about just getting to know both sides of the culture and how you need to adapt. Definitely, if you can do that ahead, then it might be easier for you to shift into that environment.
That's great. Yeah. And as Manoj said, you know, learning more about the culture, especially the working culture, because you might see that things are quite different from Hungary or different from what you experienced in the US, right? So these are also things that you should research. Do you have an idea? But also important, isn't it, Csenge, is which region or which city do you want to settle in? Because they may also have different regimes, because the different regions in Germany, they have their own kind of parliaments as well. So you need to see, some of them are more relaxed on certain things, others not. For example, I still pay taxes to the church.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I said, how do I opt out? And my mom said, send a letter, but then don't get married in church over there. I said, no, back anyways. So yeah, you need to see how the different authorities work in the different regions, right?
Or even like, because Spain works similarly, so there are also different regions, and like some topics are in regional jurisdiction, but some topics are in state jurisdiction, so that also kind of influences the kind of things they ask for. Or that often happens, at least here, that they ask for like a duplicate kind of thing, that you need to present papers on both sides so that everybody's aware of what you're trying to arrange.
And then I was thinking, when I look at moving to Portugal, you know, I'm going with a cat. So obviously we're in Brexit, so I need to do all the documentation for the cat, which is fine. It's okay. Also, I'm going to bring my car down to Portugal, so I needed to check what I need to do in terms of license plates, getting my driver's license over there, exchange or not, you know, do I need to pass it again or not? How to get the permanent residency. In which council, you know, removal company, how to send my stuff to Portugal. That's also an important thing to research. How much is that going to cost? Does it make more sense for me to buy everything there? Or does it make more sense for me to ship it and it's cheaper, right? So all these type, also health insurance, right? So what type of health insurance do I want? Is there a national health insurance, which there is in Portugal if you pay your national contribution? However, if you want to have a better, let's say, coverage, you would take a private health insurance. So then is researching what are the options in terms of private health insurance, what are the prices, you know. For the home, same, if you're renting or if you're buying, you may need to have an insurance for the home, right, on top of renting. So these are things, for example, in France, if you rent an apartment, you also have to pay a special insurance for the rental, yeah, which you don't in many other countries, but you do in France. So it's mandatory. If you're going to be renting the flat, they will ask for a receipt from the insurance to make sure that you're insured. Yeah. So all these little things, you know, is a lot to process. And I mean, the way that I do it, I don't know how you do, Csenge, but before I even prepared myself, I wrote down everything that is important for me, what I need to research, you know. And then I started my research. And then I said, okay, I need to ask a lawyer. I need to ask an accountant. And so I took the appointments. And then I said, okay, now I need to look for a flat. So then I started going back and forth to check. We finally found one, so that's good. And then you need to think, what happens in the country that I'm in? Yeah, do I want to sell my property? Do I want to rent it? What are the implications? So all these things, you know, are to be considered. Is there anything else to add, Csenge, you think?
I think that's quite comprehensive. I work similar way to you. Like I had a list, and that list also kept growing as I found more and more information about things, but it was kind of helpful to just have like a thread of things that I needed to check. And yeah, I mean, obviously, if like paperwork gets too complicated, it's definitely worth just like really getting an accountant or a lawyer. I actually had an accountant that I just had like a couple of sessions because I just had questions around the taxes that I knew that it's something that I need to know once. And then, yeah, it was just easier to talk to someone who knew about the system. And then I took a lot of notes, and then it was very helpful afterwards. And then I also see that Vicky mentioned that they're going on a field trip. I think that's definitely a great idea, because then you also see like really where you're going, and then you get a feel of the place. You also, I mean, you can also get more information and more done if you're there. So I think that's definitely a great stuff.
And Sandra mentioned the mental health checklist. I think that is really important. So one example, Sandra, actually for my mental health, right? I know that is really bureaucratic and very slow. And I tend to be someone, I think that might be my German side, where I say I need it by yesterday and not tomorrow. Okay, so I like to have things done quickly. And so we had visitors from Portugal. They are actually Brazilians, and they were walking so slow. And I was like, how? A trip that takes you half an hour took us an hour and a half. And I said, no. And my partner said, listen, if you cannot slow down, you'll have a lot of issues, because the pace of life is much slower. So you need to start now, chilling down, and appreciating that the style of life is slower.
Oh, yes.
And we mentioned the language, Csenge, isn't it? It makes things easier to speak the language, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, something I discovered here, I already spoke some Spanish when I came. And of course, like since I was living in a small town in my first year, it got much better. And then it still keeps getting better. I mean, I'm very comfortable with it now, but you always learn new things. And I also discovered that, for example, a lot of my questions I could also ask directly to like the public offices, which was actually something that you only kind of figure it out if you speak the language. So it was also helpful that I could just show up in one office, and then of course they're already like, oh, if you don't have an appointment, like we won't attend you. It's like, I just want to ask a few questions, and it's like, sure, ask away. So yeah, so knowing the language has definitely been very helpful. At least for the paperwork, it really made a difference to just like kind of be able to explain what I wanted, even when I didn't have the words.
And then what's interesting, after all this research, after being prepared and ready to move, you arrive in the country, right? And this is where it gets interesting. Because we first go into the honeymoon, right? Everything is so exciting, the new home, the new school for the kids. Everything is so cool. Everything is running smoothly for some. Sometimes it cannot run so smoothly. And this is where we can run into culture shock when things don't go the way we expect them to go, right? So there are different types of culture shock, Csenge, isn't there? Or different triggers to culture shock, right?
Yeah, I mean, they can really be just like, I don't know, all of a sudden like some homesickness hitting you just because you see something that is different. It can be something small, it can be something big. It kind of also depends on you and the place you're moving at. Yeah, it can, I mean, and it's also, I think, something that I found over the years, it's also not something that is static. So it's not like you go through some cultural shocks and it's like, check, it's done. It's kind of, the longer you stay in a place, like more things come up. But the good thing is that as you also get more adapted, it gets easier to really like just deal with these changes, or you can even just like smile about them. It's like, oh yeah, maybe another one. Okay, that will make a nice anecdote.
And I like that Sandra is saying again, don't forget your mental health. When I moved to Spain, I spoke Spanish from school. So obviously with your Spanish you learn in school, you cannot go to the supermarket or to the bank and ask for things because it's really basic, right? But I remember getting migraines a lot because Spanish people speak very loud, very fast. And knowing that this was my fourth language, it was really taking a toll. And I always pushed myself because I said to myself, I'm studying in Spanish. I need, in a month and a half, 2 months maximum, I need to speak perfect Spanish. And so I didn't think of my mental health. Why? Because I was constantly around Spaniards. I was watching, listening to radio in Spanish. I was overstretching myself. And this is what a lot of immigrants or expats do, is that they want to fit in so quickly that they immerse themselves too much to the point where they forget, you know, and I'm an introvert, they forget that it's too much. It's too much overwhelm, right?
Yeah.
And so that can, sorry, go ahead.
Finish. And then...
No, I was just saying, then it can lead to culture shock, because then I said, sometimes I needed a whole weekend to just recover, you know?
Yeah.
All of that.
Actually, one of my biggest cultural shocks in Spain is related to that. So also because I was living in a small town where nobody spoke to me in English, obviously, because the moment they kind of heard that I manage in Spanish, it was like, oh, you speak Spanish, you're fine. And of course, it was like very challenging because I also had a lot of headaches and all that. But I remember after like the first couple of months, I made a Spanish friend and she invited me out with her friends. And we went to see like something, like some cultural thing. And then we went for dinner. And so I was very used to like the Hungarian way of dinner, like you sit down with your friends, like, you know, there's one topic of conversation, normally one person speaks at a time, we take turns, and you know, it's like all very chill and all that. It's like, well, in Spain it was very different. So we sat down, I think we were a group of like 15. There were at least 6 or 7 different topics and conversations going on at the same time all over the place. If you do not interrupt people, you do not speak, because there's just no way. Like I was actually sitting here like waiting for people to finish so I could actually add something, but by the time that happened, they're already like 3 topics away, so I could barely speak. And people kept asking me like, are you okay, you're so silent? It's like, well, yeah, I am, you know, but like so it was like a very, very messy evening, and I finished with like a massive headache because I was like, oh my god, like what is this chaos? Like I was expecting, you know, like a chill friend dinner kind of thing, and it just so wasn't. And then after of course I had my friend, and she actually was very worried about me. It's like, you were so silent the whole evening, like are you okay, or you know, you feel unwell? It's like, no, I'm completely fine, I'm just used to a very different way of conversation. And I actually asked her and she started laughing. It's like, yeah, that's kind of how we chat.
Has anyone else experienced culture shock? Could be something completely different, right? Could be unrelated to the language or the way people interact with one another. Anyone has experienced any culture shocks?
For me, it's sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Really quickly, it was when I went to Italy. There was 2 things. There was the gypsies. Okay. I just missed that part where I was supposed to warn myself to protect myself and you know, not look so touristy. But when you're carrying a piece of luggage behind you, I mean, clearly you're a tourist. 2, when we went to Italy, it was the dogs. Like for me, it was heaven. It was dog heaven. You know, dogs everywhere, dogs being able to ride on the subway and the bus. And it was like, oh, I need to move to Italy. So it was a culture shock, but it was a good one. Nobody never tells you that.
That's
so
true.
Yeah, for me, it was a nice thing to see. And the hanging out on the store steps in Germany, the fountains where people just gather around in Spain, like they do that in Spain too. I mean, it was just lovely. So far, I would say those are the lovely, like you say, the honeymoon parts, right? Wait until it's like, I can't communicate, I can't say anything. Yeah, that's how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for reminding us that there are also positive culture shocks, you know. Andrea, I think you wanted to say something, right?
Yeah, I really like what you shared, Sandra. I think for me, there's definitely a lot more positive culture shocks. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here consecutively. So I just want to put that ahead. But yeah, the kind of more shocking ones that I find really hard to this day for me is the insult. So in Spain, people love to insult each other, and it's funny and cute and all these things. And especially also in the Argentinian culture, as I'm pointing at my partner over there, love insulting. Like his mom would call him a son of a bitch. And it's like cute, supposedly. And I know it, and I can like breathe through it. I can internalize it. I know that you don't mean it in the way that I hear it, but I just can't get over it. I remember for our invitation for the wedding, we sent an email to everyone. He sent an email to his parents saying, "Hola viejos," which basically means, "Hey, old guys." And I was like, no, we are not saying this in an email. Like, if this has my name underneath it, I'm not saying this in an email. And It's just something, I guess it's a little bit German. I think we are a culture that really doesn't use general insults in their language, and you know, the word fuck all the time or stuff like this. We just don't. And so for me, it's consecutively quite hard. Also in the workplace, I hear words very often that I just really don't enjoy hearing. So it's been 5 years. I still find that difficult.
That's a good point as well. Yeah, the formality, informality, and the relaxed approach to, you know, swear words or not. Yeah. Any other interesting culture shocks or happy culture shocks? So if you don't have any, we have 8 minutes left. So Csenge, what is the best way when we arrive into, like, let's say, a negative state of mind, you know, where we're like, oh my God, they're so annoying, they speak so loud, you know, what can we do to get ourselves out of this negative loop?
Definitely, I think what works well is talking to like a close friend. I think that at least for me, that's always something that is very helpful, like someone who, you know, like knows me well, to whom I don't need to explain myself, like just kind of to get this shift back. Also, I have very good friends who sometimes just give me like that, like gentle, but like nudge, you know, like, okay, stop thinking like that, you know, like just put it into perspective. So I think that's very helpful for sure. If you can, I don't know, just cook yourself like a meal that you really enjoy, like if you can find the ingredients, even getting out to just like nature, I think that's also very helpful, because I mean, obviously, like you cannot always just escape the place. So I mean, also going home for a couple of days can also help to just kind of get you back into balance. But if you can, then I think, yeah, going out to nature, that's always very helpful. Yeah, just kind of find like the small pieces of things that make you happy. I also very much enjoy journaling, like when I feel annoyed, because it still happens sometimes to this day, and it's just very nice to kind of just write it out and reflect, and that always kind of pushes me back to balance. I think these small things can definitely help.
That's very Lena, I see you have your mic on. Would you like to share something with us, please?
Yeah, maybe. I'm in Spain as well. This is my 10th year in Spain, so I'm every day I'm finding situations like small cultural shocks every day. Some of it I can accept, some of it no. But my advice would be what I was living in my first year here in Spain. I came with my bubble, with my world, and I was trying to keep inside this bubble, thinking that my world is the correct one. But it's not true. I think we should be more open to other culture, explore, to not be afraid of it. And I was really, I had really big project, not speaking Spanish. I have got a team more than 4,000 people, national, all countries. So it was like shocking. Andalusia, north of Spain, so different accents, different dialects. But when I started to go out with Spanish people, I found a hobby. I found out ceramics. Then I had a group of people doing ceramics, so I was relaxing and doing this hobby, learning language. So it helps. So I agree with Sandra. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name. That it's really important to go to the nature, to look for some things you can relax and step out of your bubble.
And I like that you say you came into your bubble, and that's what a lot of people do, right? So it's interesting because being a third culture child, so being of two cultures, which, to be fair, the Germans never recognizes me as German and the French don't recognize me as French. So I created my own little world, you know. I was always around people that were a bit marginalized, you know, of different cultures. And I realized that in every country that I lived, you make friends in a different way, right? So I noticed that in Germany, you need to invest more time building those relationships, spending more time with them around. In Spain, I noticed, yes, they do like to be outside. They do bring you into the group. And it does take a while as well before you have this really, really strong connection, right? So we need to remember that in each country that we are going to live in is going to be a different way to get friends, especially with natives, Because what we need to remember is that these natives, they already have their circle of friends, right? So they're going to say, why should I add someone to my friends list and have to spread myself even more? And you will notice the friends that you will make that are natives are usually those that may have been expatriated before, maybe who studied elsewhere, or also expats that really want to integrate into the culture. Because when I lived in Singapore, I was surrounded always with Singaporeans. I made really good friends with the team assistants that we had. And being a smoker at the time, when you went down, you met other people and you started to talk to them. I was invited to karaoke. So my circle of friends, yes, I had the expat ones, but I also had the natives, which I spent much more time with because I thought this is how I'm going to learn about them, right? And so we need to keep in mind with our expectations, right? Because we always say, I'll make native friends. And then I saw in the Internations report that Germany is considered for expats the unhappiest place on earth because they find it difficult to socialize with people. So this is something to keep in mind, is that you can socialize with people. You just need to, you know, have the right expectations as to how long it's going to take, right? Isn't it, Csenge? So
yeah, absolutely. And I also like how Lina mentioned hobbies, because I think that's also kind of like a nice way to really get into like local communities. Because I mean, you know, you sign up for something that you're interested in, like there's a very good chance that also locals sign up for things they're interested in. So I do think that, yeah, it is important to keep in mind and yeah, just kind of balance this out.
And now we're just going to wrap up because you see, we've had such interesting conversations. It's already an hour that went by. So I hope that you'll be interested to have more conversations around different topics. Do not hesitate to share with us what are the types of topics that you would like to discuss. Because I think having a group, asking questions, having these informal conversations around it already opens the mind a little bit. And so I hope that this is something that you found useful and that you will come back to at some point. Might be monthly, isn't it, Csenge? We'll do once a month, a 1 hour session on topics that interest anyone. So feel free to share whatever you're interested in, and then we'll organize that.
Yeah, it's called series for a reason. So we kind of want to make this a recurring thing. So yeah, don't hesitate to send us suggestions.
And if you want to know anything else, you have both our LinkedIn, so you can DM us, you know, if there's something specific, let's say, Vicky, about Germany that you would like to know, just let me know. I can send you some information. Or if someone is going to Spain, you can ask Csenge. Or even generally, if you're going to Saudi, you can ask Sandra. She will help you out. And Manoj, you'll help people for the UK, isn't it? And Iliana for obviously the Netherlands.
Anything with the UK, I've been here for over 20 plus years, and definitely like culture shock it again depends on your upbringing within your environment and your work environment, how you need to adapt. And it's a learning curve, and it's always you have something to learn.
And also, as you know, that's why there are professionals like Csenge, myself, and Sandra here to actually help with the transition and help in the preparation. Right. So thank you, everyone. I wish you all a beautiful weekend and all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.